What's good, party people? This is According to Woods, and I have the honor and privilege of talking to somebody who just competed at Josh Barnett's Bloodsport 7 this weekend. She is one of the newest signees to Impact Wrestling's knockout division. She's the one, the only, Masha Slamovich. Masha, what's going on?
I just got home from Los Angeles and then going up to Connecticut for another show, so I am finally back in my house now.
It's good to be home, right?
It's good. I'm only going to be here for a few days, so I'm going to get some training done, eat some food, and then hit the road.
Hey, that's a definite way to do it. Obviously, as you're kind of moving up in the world, you're like, the idea of traveling seems so amazing, right? And then when you get into the thick of things, maybe it's not as glamorous as one might make it out to be.
Certainly. I still thoroughly enjoy traveling and seeing the world and seeing the different states, but sometimes it gets a little hectic, and American Airlines tends to be the fuel to that frustration most of the time. So
Oh, I love the tweets of lost baggage, and usually you might do just in general, people might do a hashtag, but like when you get at them directly and tag the official Twitter and what have you, that's the fun ones, and
absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah, they should get called on the carpet. I mean, you're not an unfallible entity. Like, you are fallible. Let's just say it, and just kind of like, can I get my bags? Can I get my connection? That's all. I just want
flights for me. I'm like, stop wasting my time. Stop booking these ridiculous flights where you can't make the layover. Just stop doing it.
Yeah, just stop. Just stop. No, but one thing that you don't do is you can't stop, won't stop. This is arguably one of the most pivotal, years of your career thus far, competing in AEW, Bloodsport, NWA. Like, you are kind of firing on all cylinders, and obviously this Impact signing. So, like, kind of being in the middle of like this amazing storm that's happening with you, how does it feel?
It feels awesome. I couldn't foresee that this was going to be what my 2021 looked like upon arriving back to the States. But here we are. And, I'm thankful for everything that the universe allows me to do in pro wrestling. And I'm just, like I said, just going to keep working harder and kicking more ass.
Hell yes, kick more ass, kick more ass. But I mean, wrestling is such a nuanced sport, and again, there's like incredible highs, but breathtaking and painful lows. But what initially drew you into the sport?
I saw pro wrestling on TV one day when I was a really young kid. I was like 3 or 4 years old, and like, I just knew that was my thing. I was like, this is what I'm meant to do, because I always wanted to, I was always drawn to fighting and like martial arts and all stuff like that. And then I learned that I could never be a professional ninja because those aren't things. So, but I just thought it would be so lame to have such a mundane life, be like a police officer, like whatever. So I saw pro wrestling, and something just told me, like, this is your realm. This is what you're here for. And I just never let that go.
That's amazing, because I have kind of the same story. Obviously, I've never taken a bump or anything like that, but like about two is my mom kind of turns on the TV, and here's Saturday night's main event with Bret Hart and Randy Savage, and I was just like, holy hell, like, this is cartoons come to life. And with us, we lived in San Francisco, so Victorian buildings, and when I would watch Superman or Mighty Mouse cartoons, my parents would be like concerned that their toddler might jump out the window, right? So the fact that it kind of negated some of that, right, in terms of pro wrestling, and some of the same dynamic personalities and the flashy colors still persisted. I mean, I was hooked from the jump, and still continues to this day.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So who was on top? Like, obviously too, it's kind of weird to to kind of comprehend, but I mean, who were some of your favorites as you were kind of coming up in life?
Well, I certainly had my favorites that you can see, you know, their work in my work, for example, like Chris Benoit and Fit Finlay. And then there's like The Undertaker. I thought The Undertaker was awesome. Shawn Michaels too. I can go on. Yeah, but those like and then like I discovered the Dynamite Kid through Chris Benoit's work and I was like, this is it. This is the good stuff.
No, 100%. Now, in terms of like obviously, you are, and you could see it in your work, just like you said, but you were drawn to the technical aspects of it, the German suplex and what have you. What kind of drew you to that versus maybe some of the personality driven presentations of pro wrestling?
Well, I liked violence as a kid. I wanted to see a fight, and the rest of the wrestlers just wasn't giving me the intensity and the violence. And like when you saw people like Kristen Wagon in there, I mean, it looked like it was a real fight. So
Yeah.
I wanted to see more of that, and I wanted to emulate that myself.
Did you get into Dean Malenko any?
I did. I got into all of the like cruiserweights of what the late '90s WCW.
Yeah, I mean, and the great thing about Dean is, you mentioned that cruiserweight division of WCW, but he wasn't the high flyer. For people that don't know, he had I think he was a teen, maybe early 20s, but he had a car crash where his neck got pretty jacked, so he couldn't do what do they say, the je ne sais quoi of the flippy shit. So he was just, and then who his father was, the great, Boris Malenko, and his older brother Joe, and what have you. They were shooters as big, coming from like this Florida snake pit and what have you. So I mean, it was just cool because he was just different than all of the rest of the presentations of the cruiserweights, and I think he was one of the first like people in the PWI 500 to get number one without actually being what most consider in North America a top guy.
There you have it. It doesn't have to. You don't have to fit into the cookie cutter description of what people would classify you as. Dean Malenko and his style stood out as as its own without needing all of the flippy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So there you go.
Yeah, absolutely. So at what point, I mean, obviously you're like, oh, this is what I want to do, almost from the onset. But what led you to actually going? Did you go seek out schools? Did you put in the Google machine? Or are you reading the back of, an after mag to find out schools in your area or maybe in the surrounding area? Like, how did you kind of go about it?
So I was really young when I discovered wrestling, so I couldn't like immediately train for it. So I took up learning martial arts. I took up all these other sports and everything in my mind that I could do to prepare to one day be a wrestler. Started weightlifting like the 12 or 11. Then I started doing CrossFit. I started track and field, swimming, all of this. And at 16, I was like, this is it. Like, I've got to do it now or never. I was like, I'm going to get old. God forbid. And I just Googled, I'm like, all right, schools in New York City for pro wrestling. And Johnny Rod's school came up, and the rest was history.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, Johnny Rod's WWE Hall of Famer. But I mean, there couldn't. I don't want to say disparage any other schools in your area, but there couldn't be a better place for you. I mean, one of my favorite people in wrestling is the Human Suplex Machine Taz, who's trained by the great Johnny Rods. And I'm all like, that's perfect for everything that you loved about the sport to go to Johnny Rods. And I heard about the ring at Gleason's where it's like might as well be cement and what have you. But I mean, there couldn't be a better place. But had you known his reputation before you kind of entered the gym?
Well, first of all, I gotta agree with you and say that that was 100% the place that I needed to be, and that was the best place that I could have gotten my roots and my foundation at. And I didn't know too much about Johnny Rods. Like I knew who he was, but I didn't know of like that he trained all these people. Like, but I knew I was in good hands because this dude seemed like he knew a lot of stuff, and like his office was just like covered in pictures of wrestlers, and he was asking about like asking the right questions of if I cared about wrestling and why, and had I studied it, and not just being like, give me your money and get in the ring.
No,
And after like a 5-hour conversation, my mother wanted to hear no more of it, so she just signed any paper to get the fuck up out of there. And
that's some pretty strong goal for a 16-year-old, but I mean that just shows your passion and perseverance regardless of whatever was coming your way. And when most 16-year-olds are going like let me go to prom, or like you said, you were competing in sports and everything like that, but this is a whole, like, you know all of those things, like the high school life, is centered around high school, but you were stepping into like an adult world, at the tender age of 16. But I mean, it served you well.
it certainly did. Like you said, all of that high school stuff, I couldn't care much for it. Every day I would just run out the back door of my high school and go to pro wrestling training every single day for 2 years on end. And that's all I wanted to do. I knew I was doing the right thing. It's like other people were going to like what is it, like SAT prep. That was my college education of wrestling that I needed to go get to. And I have no regrets devoting all of that time to pro wrestling. I think it was the greatest decision I made for myself. And
Yeah.
it certainly prepared me, and it helped me grow up quick because I was just unleashed into the adult world and I was just out there.
No, 100%. The Good Brothers, Dudes at Ringside podcast says, hey, Woods, hey, Masha, hey, Joel, and Metal Geek. What's going on? Now, you mentioned your mom, right? And taking her to this gym, she knew you were athletic with all of your endeavors that you're partaking in and what have you. But, like, what was your mom's reaction to all of this?
She knew that there was nothing that she could say or do to deter me from finally going through with it. So she didn't bother putting up much of a fight with me on it. She tried to ask questions like, is this safe? And like, we all had to tell her like, no, it's not. But she worried and she cared, but she knew that she really had no choice and that I was just going to be swept into this world, whether she liked it or not.
Yeah, that's it. You can't stop once, won't stop. When somebody has a drive like that, it's unforshakable. And that's I'm glad it all worked out. But what I want to know, without divulging too much, I mean, say what you want to say. But I mean, obviously, you were training and what have you in other facets of athletics. But what was that first day like at the Gleason's gym, that famed ring where I mean spawned so many Hall of Famers and top tier guys and gals?
I remember my first day very well. It was myself and 3 other students there. And then they started me with the basics, the rolls and the roll downs, and like they came out pretty good because I had a gymnastics background and then like I was just pretty athletic. So by the end of the first day, they were like, all right, should we be teaching you bumps now? Because you're kind of getting this. So, we started doing that. And then by that time, it was like the gym closed and we had to go home. But, I think the first day was a tell sign of things were going to go pretty well. But I wasn't going to let myself get too excited about it. I was like, all right, I'm just going to keep coming back and learning quietly.
No, 1,000%, 1,000%. Now, out of that, kind of handful of folk that you train with, are all of them still in the business?
Notably, people who I like first started out with, Karen Q is now signed to WWE.
Yes.
MJ Jenkins, no,
Yeah,
yes, that was her name. Yeah, she was in NXT also. She was also there when I first started out. Yeah, man, I think that's about it. I don't really think anybody else came to any kind of great fame from our class aside from the 3 of us, it seems like.
Well, that just kind of shows you everybody. You say even like in all combat sports, especially the punchy things, right? everybody has a plan until you get punched in the face, theoretically, right? And it's absolutely true. It might be cool to see posters or videos and kind of like that's what I'm going to do, and you tell your friends and everything, and then actually doing the work, it's a completely different thing.
100%. Through the years, I've seen so many people come and go, and just they're not cut out for it. It's too rough, and you just don't want. Some people don't want to get punched in the face, I guess, and that's fine.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you don't want to get punched in the face, taking a German to your neck, that's a hard sell.
Sure is.
So, do you remember like a first match, and at what point of your training does that happen? And was it like a, kind of a house loop, or did you have to find bookings yourself?
So my beginnings of my career was definitely a little unconventional. I was in New York, where obviously I wasn't 18 yet, so I wasn't even allowed to wrestle on shows at all. So I started out, working the camera on shows, and then I was a manager for a tag team. Um, and then we had Japanese scouts come, and they wanted to bring me over to Japan to have my debut over there, and that's precisely what ended up happening. We I was put in a tag match to do like a little exhibition match, and I had to like get a fake ID because people weren't trying to hear any of it. But whatever, we did this little exhibition match, and next thing I know, I just graduated high school. I just turned 18, and then 2 weeks later, I'm having my professional wrestling debut in Tokyo.
Could there be a better start to your career? I mean, my goodness, you idolize, you mentioned the Benoits and Malenkos and, the technical aspect of it. And that's a bit of a rite of passage. I mean, heck, Danielson walked away from big money in the WWE just so he can maybe, quite possibly, do Japan and an extended tour, So, like, that is your first go. What does that feel like?
It was a huge honor because I'd always wanted to work in Japan, and to just off the rip immediately be sent over there to work. I was so honored, and I was like, this is, I can't fuck up. I've got to do good here. I'm representing Johnny Rods. I'm representing myself. I'm representing Russia, because I was the first Russian woman to wrestle in Japan. Pretty much since there was only one other one who had like 3 matches, and it was in like 1972. So in recent history, I'm the first Russian woman to have wrestled over there, and I took great pride in that. And I went over there and I did my best, working for Reina Pro Wrestling, and also working for Diana Women's Wrestling and Pro Wrestling Wave on my first tour there.
That's absolutely amazing. Which, I mean, did you do some of the wrestler kind of lores in Japan? Did you go to Ribera Steakhouse?
I was taken there by Masa Anchan my first night after my debut.
Shout out to Masa, man. That's a good brother. Like
Masa, he is the best. Showed me a good time in Tokyo.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Now, you mentioned your Russian heritage, which is something that you proudly display, in your presentation, and so, like, what does that mean? Because we're in this kind of wave of diversity and what have you. Did you have any kind of was there trouble about kind of explaining what you are and what you wanted to do? Did you get any pushback, or was people like, yeah, she's Russian and she's a gal and she's technical, not the prototypical diva, let's go? Like, how was it?
Everyone, there was no real issue. They were like, all right, it is what it is. I do think in the beginning it was more of like a crutch for me, because I didn't have a personality, I want to say. So I was like, here's this giant Russian flag. I'm just not going to speak English. Fast forward to now, where I am myself, but I just represent my country, but it's not, there's me. You see Russian Dynamite, and it's not just a flag.
No, absolutely. And I mean, a long lineage of great shooters coming from Russia. That's a pretty lofty kind of thing to kind of literally wear on your back, but you wear it with pride.
Certainly. And, as everyone knows, Russia has some really crazy combat sports, and we're really prideful of our fighters. So I go out there every time and do my best because there's nothing less acceptable than number one when you're from Russia.
Number one, Russia. I mean, I'm actually looking. I have a figure of Habib Nurmagomedov, right? And it's like Russia number one. Like, yeah, I love it. I absolutely love it. Now, obviously, this is a story that is continuing to write itself. But at this particular juncture of your career, do you have a favorite, either experience or maybe match? Like, because this is, I mean, again, this is one of the like the most eventful and fruitful years of your career, but like it's taken, I mean, you've been doing work since. So do you have a favorite memory that kind of was the catalyst for all of this?
I every month I'm going to give you a different answer, especially this year, because I mean it just keeps coming. It's like Empower, Impact, Bloodsport. Like I don't like I am. I'm having my debut for FMW this weekend. Like, what is that? That is crazy. You know what I mean? I can't even anticipate or expect any of the things that are coming up because, I mean, they just keep getting crazier as life goes. And it's just a testament to the fact that hard work really does pay off. And the more that you give to pro wrestling, the more that you get back.
Absolutely. Now, in terms of like advice, because you're a tenured young veteran, do you have any advice for somebody kind of coming up through the sport, or what have you, or just in life in general about overcoming obstacles?
My advice is as simple. It is, if you really want something, first of all, be sure that you want it and understand the sacrifices that you're going to have to make for it. And if you really do want it, then commit your life to it. Like, be ready to give up everything to do whatever it takes. And I mean, whatever it takes, because there's going to be things that you're going to have to sacrifice that you can't even think of right now. But, what you give is what you get. So the more you give to it, the more you devote to it, the more you're going to get back to it. And I'm living proof of that. So I'm not the only one. You can be the next success story.
Absolutely. I love it. I absolutely love it. Is there a particular match that maybe you, as a fan, before you actually got in the business, that you maybe didn't appreciate as much, but then once getting in the business, like you kind of change your, optics of that particular match?
Probably all of them. I don't know. Oh no, not this. Uh, yeah, probably like every single one because you just view things differently as a wrestler as opposed to being a fan, and you just go back and rewatch it, and either it gets better or it gets worse. So it's always really fun to go back and see a match that you saw as a kid and be like, "This is still the greatest work of wrestling art I've ever seen," or go back and watch a match and be like, "Wow, that's fucking garbage."
Yeah. No, 100%. We're not gonna point anybody out, but I might say the Ultimate Warrior. That's mine. You don't have to agree, but like, everybody like digs it, and you could, and that's one thing that I don't like right now is like people are like, oh, I'm a WWE or I'm a GCW or I'm a AEW. Watch whatever you want to watch, man. Like it's cool, and it's good that there's a particular fan base that kind of agrees with a particular style of wrestling, and not everybody's gonna like everything, and it just love what you love, right?
Exactly. Honestly, right now is like the best time to be a wrestling fan because there's so much going on that 10 years ago you'd be like, this is insane. Like, well, the possibilities, the amount of things, like, you never know who's going to walk into Impact. You never know who's going to walk into AEW, your local independence show. If you like pro wrestling, right now is the time to get out there in person. Right now is the time to go subscribe to whatever streaming service that you want to subscribe to and support your indie wrestling.
Support indie wrestling. I mean, that's a hashtag to the umpteenth degree. I love it. I love it. Now, in terms of because we asked about favorite matches and what have you. But if you could have a dream match of anybody, past, present, and I'm going to actually add a little bit of an asterisk where it's not just the person, but where does this take place? Because they're especially within the pantheons of wrestling. You've got Tokyo. I mean, what's it? Ultimo Dragon said he wanted to do Arena Mexico, Madison Square Garden, Tokyo Dome, and I think there's a fourth one. But like, where does who's the person and where does this take place? Any past or present, living or dead? Who would you like to match up against?
Give me Meiko Satomura in the Tokyo Dome.
Oh God, she's an innovator. Oh, I love that match.
That match would absolutely go insane. And if I could like go back in time and wrestle somebody, please God, just let me wrestle Akira Hokuto once again in the Tokyo Dome.
I love it. I love it. Now, obviously, before we go, we got to talk about Bloodsport 7. Josh Barnett's Bloodsport 7. Again, it's one of my favorite. I'm wearing a Carl Gotch shirt. You know, I love catch can wrestling. Always have, always will. But what was that experience, like for you, and to kind of match up with Marina Shafir? That was a nutty match.
Definitely immediately ranked as one of my favorite matches or fights that I've had this year. We have great chemistry. I certainly hope that we get to fight again and wrestle. Well, probably one of my favorite events that I've done this year, 100%. I felt so confident, so at home in that arena, in that ring, just completely in my element. And I certainly look forward to Bloodsport 8. Hopefully I'll be on that, and I'm absolutely ready to come back to the mat.
I love it. I absolutely love it. I mean, I got literal goosebumps because that's it. I'm thinking about dream matches in my head, so I'm going to do this all day. But how did you adjust to the no rope deal? Because that's a little bit of a different deal, and even the stipulation of no pins, just knockouts and submissions. Like, how did you adjust?
I didn't feel I needed to adjust. I felt right at home. Somebody who was clearly at Johnny Rod's, we did a whole bunch of catch wrestling there, doing jujitsu in my spare time, training with Barnett on several different occasions. The ropes not being there made me more comfortable, if anything, because it took away distractions that were in my sight.
Yeah, it's almost like open mat in the jiu-jitsu game, right? It's just like, come one, come all, let's just go.
I loved it. Like I said, I was at home in that ring.
You looked it. You absolutely looked it. But obviously, Masha, you have done so much in your career. And again, this is something, the book is still continuing to be written. But there have been a lot of people who have attributed to your success. So take as long as you need, both professionally and personally. Let's get some shout outs out of the way.
First of all, Johnny Rod's obviously the person who gave me my start in wrestling. As much as people can say there was crazy people at the school and crazy things happen, listen, crazy shit happens everywhere.
Yep.
Me personally, and my experience and my story is completely different from everybody else. And I am fully thankful to Johnny for everything, because he set me up with the knowledge of lucha, Japanese wrestling, American wrestling, catch wrestling, and, sent me on an excursion that would change my life. Past that, I have to thank when I returned to Japan, I was there for a year training under Chigusa Nagayo, and she completely changed me as a wrestler, me as a person, and was another turning point in my life, being there, especially throughout all of 2020 during the pandemic. So I will never be able to thank Chigusa and everybody at Marvelous enough for what they've done for me. And hopefully I get to go back over there and see everybody again one day. And there's so many other people in the business behind the scenes who gave me so much advice and who taught me about the business, taught me about life, and just so many of my friends. They all know who they are when they're listening. So thank you. Thanks to everybody.
Yeah, and also shout out to Mom to take you to the Johnny Rod's at 16, man. And even if she was forced into
for letting me live this insane life, which other parents would be like, no.
No, absolutely not. Yeah, but again, it worked out, which Your mom, have you kind of converted her? Does she kind of believe the bum rush of what you see in it?
She's coming around to it. My mom, if anything, is a woman with good wrestling taste, because I showed her Dynamite Kid and Tiger Mask from Madison Square Garden, and she was way more interested in watching that and then continuing to watch Japanese wrestling with me versus watching WWE. So my mother is a woman of class and taste.
Pinky up, pinky all the way up, and thank you for the conversion. As we come on, come on, wrestling is for you. Come on, no, come on, right?
Support indie wrestling. Support all the wrestling.
Absolutely. And in terms of supporting, right? Because you are doing so many incredible things. Where can people find you if they haven't already done so on the interwebs?
I have all of my social pages and my Patreon at Masha Slamovich, where I have all the fun and exclusive content. And of course, I have a pro wrestling tees, which is also under Masha Slamovich. So shirts, purchase them.
Absolutely, which I have linked all of those links right in the description of this very podcast. So I made it easy for you guys, you know. But Masha, thank you so much. I'm so proud of what you're doing. And again, the sky is the limit. It's amazing, you know. And again, thank you guys for joining us here at According to Woods. And if you haven't already done so, go ahead and like, share, and subscribe to the According to Woods podcast on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. I mean, Masha, you're subscribed to the podcast, aren't you?
I believe I am.
Hell yes. So be like Masha and go ahead and crush your dreams and do that. And also subscribe to the podcast. But if you don't believe me and you don't believe Masha, and I don't know why you wouldn't, well, here's another Bloodsport 7 competitor, Zeta Zhang, to help convince you.
Hey, this is Zeta Zhang. Make sure you subscribe to According to